This program is made possible by the support of Delta Dental, Quick Trip, Marshfield Clinic Health System, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Hospital Association. Watch WisconsinEye on Spectrum Channels 995 and 363 and at wiseye.org.
WisconsinEye is in Milwaukee. We're interviewing candidates for county executive. The county executive position will be filled in the April 7 election. State Senator Chris Larson wants to move from the 7th Senate District to the county executive seat. Senator, thanks for taking time for WisconsinEye.
Thank you, Steve. Good to see you.
Let's ask a 10,000-foot question first. What's your vision for Milwaukee County 4 years out if you're elected?
Yeah, well, we want to make sure that we're changing the dynamics quite a bit. I think there's been a sense that there's a lot of cuts that happen. We should be looking at the bottom line, which of course we should. But I think it's a matter of what our culture is in Milwaukee County. I think that there's been a great divide that's been pushed by politicians and pushed by others to try and alienate and make people look like strangers. The fact is, I want to look at government more like a family, right, where we are taking care of each other because it's the right thing to do, where we take care of our neighbors because it's the right thing to do, right? When we had snow, making sure that we were shoveling the walkway in front of my neighbor's house, Camille, and then you expand that out. You can do bigger things when you look at each other as a community. That's how we make sure that our roads are taken care of. That's how we make sure we have a robust park system that everybody can enjoy and breathe easy. And if you expand that out to all of Milwaukee County, you start to realize we're all in one neighborhood. And when you can do that, looking at each other as neighbors, there's nothing we can't do.
When outgoing county exec Chris Abley appeared before the Assembly Ways and Means Committee, he said something that makes me want why anybody would want this job. He said that the next county executive, whoever it is, faces a shortfall of between $25 and $30 million. And that's going to be tough fiscal decisions. What programs would you in your budget as county exec be sure to protect?
Yeah, well, the first one we said is we're going to make sure our parks are protected. Contrary to what most people recognize, is parks make up 6% of the budget annually. And I think it's important to preserve those. The value is much greater than that, right? This is what people pride themselves on. When they bring folks from out of town, if you're going to have a picnic, you go to one of our 143 parks, or just to spend time with your family. So we made sure up front that we are not selling off any of our parks, and we're going to make sure that's protected for the next generation. Beyond that, there was a stall before I announced for this office, and that was because I needed to check with folks who are in county government. I wanted to say, look, we're going to have tough times ahead. I wanted to make sure that they recognize that a county executive, Larson, is not going to come in there and solve everything with the snap of his fingers, that it's going to be tough. And I asked what the best way to do that was, and they said, well, just do what you've always done. You know, be transparent, be honest about it, make sure that people know in advance, and make sure you're consulting the public. And that's how we're going to go about it, right? We're not going to start at this point. I want to get a good, honest look at the budget. We haven't had a chance to do that. And so once we do, once those cuts do come down, we're going to make sure we're open and honest about how those are happening. But more importantly, I think it's important to have a leader with experience who is looking down the road about where we are trying to head to get out of this mess. Otherwise, the current county executive is right. We're going to be cutting. But we don't want that to be just the sentence year after year after year. We have to figure out a way to have revenue flexibility, to get funds from the feds, to get more control for locals. If we don't do that, we're just going to keep cutting, and then we're going to lose those things we care the most about. And that's why I'm running. I want to make sure we are building up and not just tearing down.
The current county executive in that testimony said one thing he tried to protect was county bus transit bus systems and fares. He said that it's used by 36,000 people to go to work, to go to doctor's appointments. Would that be a similar priority if you're elected?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd like to have a more robust transit system. We need dedicated funding for it, and that's something I've been fighting for 11 years, sometimes with the current county exec fighting against me, and he actually joined our coalition in asking for this at the state capitol, which is new. He was not there 4 years ago and actually spent over $1 million attacking us for our position before adopting it and now advocating for it. So we've been trying to grow the coalition on getting dedicated funding for transit, and I get it takes a while for people to understand, but that allows for people to be predictable or be able to predict when they're getting to work, getting to jobs. For jobs, to be able to predict that they can get an educated and able workforce in their workplace, right? And people being able to get to school at UW-Milwaukee or Marquette. All of that is important for planning purposes. So yeah, we want to make sure to preserve as much as we can. The only way that happens, though, is dedicated funding. Otherwise, we'll just continue to look at a patchwork. And that patchwork, as we see every budget time, starts to fall apart at the seams.
Talk about your dedicated funding. Where would it come from, and would it be how would it be used? Would it be used to offset property taxes, freeze property taxes? So source of dedicated funding. Sir.
Yeah, a portion. And the one that I've advocated for the last 12 years is sales tax, right?
Yes.
And again,
this 1% idea?
This is, originally it was 1%, right, exactly. 1% for parks, for transit, for emergency medical services, and for property tax relief. Right. That was what we took to the public. That was the proposal that everyone said, you're ludicrous, people aren't going to vote for this. And that is the proposal we passed by the public. Unfortunately, it was advisory. In Wisconsin, we only have binding referendums when they are property tax related. We can't do binding referendums for other revenue sources, so we had to go to the state, and we've continued to go to the state to try and fight for that. I won't get into all of the turmoil that happened, but we never ended up getting it. But what that does is it makes it predictable, right? Otherwise, we rely on property taxes for just about everything. 42% of where our revenue comes from in Milwaukee County is from property taxes. That, on average, across the country is 22%. So having dedicated funding, what does that mean? Look at places like Portland, where they've had it for 50 years, and what they're able to do in expanding in a predictable way. So yes, the sales tax is the easiest one because that's what we've relied on. And again, not just saying, give us this power, let us go do it. We'll take it to the public. We'll ask for a referendum. We'll be able to sell it to them. Again.
So you're a supporter of the plan that got the public hearing in Assembly Ways and Means, where 25% of the $160 million property tax reduction, 7% health and safety, and the rest divided between the county and so you're a fan of that.
Municipalities, yeah. I mean, that's the current version that's been pushed through. I think that is one that people have rallied around. I think the reality is this was probably dead on arrival a few months ago, just because it does help Milwaukee alone. And as you know from working in the Capitol, when you say, hey, help us out here in Milwaukee, unfortunately some folks outstate see that as a reason why to ignore us. The fact is we are the economic engine that is running the state. We have sent over $538 million more to the state this last year in tax revenues than what we did 10 years ago. At the same time, we got $144 million less back from the state. So we are the economic engine. All we're asking for is the ability to be able to tax ourselves. I don't think that argument is working. I don't think this proposal will pass. But what we can do is band together with other municipalities, other counties across the state that have also been, frankly speaking, screwed over by the state, right? That they had their local control cut off by the Capitol. I think if we do that and say, hey, we have a statewide coalition that's looking for local control and looking for revenue flexibility, again, not just saying we're going to tax like crazy, but saying give us the power, give us the ability to talk to our locals and pass things via referendum like they do in, say Colorado, where they pass a referendum, they give a revenue projection, they say here's what it's going to go for, and if the revenue projections are off, folks get a refund. I think we deserve to be able to do that here so that we're competitive with other states.
Senator Johnson in that Assembly Ways and Means Committee said Wisconsin has a historically low sales tax.
Yeah.
Should we go as a state to 6 or 6.5% just statewide sales tax to provide more shared revenue aid?
Yeah, I would hope that more of the funds go that the locals are allowed to be able to do that. Municipalities, towns, and counties, because right now the ability to raise revenue at the local level is so severely restricted, and so I think that is a place that we should go. Yes, our sales tax is low. Anybody who travels to Chicago for a weekend getaway or to watch the Brewers beat the Cubs knows that their sales tax is almost double what we've got here. Same thing if you go over to Minneapolis on the other side of the state, where it's over 8%. So yes, I think we should be looking at that, but again, making sure that it's offsetting property taxes, which are way too high.
The current county executive at that committee meeting said he ran into his words, buzzsaw when he proposed a wheel tax. Yeah. As county exec, would you revisit the idea of a wheel tax, or also DOA?
Yeah, look, I think what happened with Mr. Abley when he decided to do that is he made the mistake of attacking folks for increasing revenues, and then right away decided to go out and do that without actually talking to the public about it, without explaining it to it. And I get that he comes from a different background than I have, right, where he's used to just getting his way because he has the biggest wallet. The reality is, if you're going to serve in public office, you serve the public. You have to go to the public. You have to bring them along with you on these ventures. And he did not do a good job of that, and that's why it ended up failing. I think if we are in that uncomfortable position where we're trying to be able to figure out revenue, I think it's going to be the question that we're going to lay on the table to be able to say, look, here are the options, and then genuinely listen to the public of what they want to do and where they want to go with it. Because I think a lot of people, they just saw that go up. They felt like they didn't have a stake in it. They felt like this was just something that was thrown at them. And I think if there is an honest conversation with the public, that's different. And that's something we've pledged to do. Pledged to visit each and every one of the municipalities every year with public coffee hours so folks can come and speak, just like we are right here with their county executive, and pledging to do that every single year. So folks will know what I'm up to.
Having been in the Senate for 10 years, how has the positions of the Republican leaders evolved in terms of how they feel about both the county of Milwaukee, city of Milwaukee? Yeah. Are they less supportive of our largest community now than 10 years ago? Yeah,
I mean, I think that there's unfortunately, Milwaukee is viewed as a punching bag by politicians across the state, and I don't understand why that is. There is no animus. I've actually when I held town halls, and I've done 108 since being state senator here, recently, because you hear people outstate saying Milwaukee's looking down their nose at us, and Milwaukee thinks they're better than us. I've asked in my town halls, like, who here is looking down at the rest of the state? Please raise your hand. No hands go up. We're all in this together. They want those areas of the state to be successful. Those are places where we go, we visit, we vacation, and folks come here and spend money. We're part of one economy. But this divide that exists, I think, is pushed artificially by politicians who want to scapegoat and say that's the cause of your problems. When the reality is, we're all in this together. And if Milwaukee doesn't succeed, and if Milwaukee doesn't have, the freedom over its own destiny, that hurts everybody. And that's a message I think we need to get out. It takes a little bit more of a conversation with folks outstate for them to realize that, yeah, maybe their kids actually went to college here or will be going to college here, and this is a place that they like to visit. I think you start to bridge that divide, and that tool where Milwaukee is a punching bag for politicians becomes less of a go-to, because I think people will start to call out what it is, and that's just fear-mongering and scapegoating.
Do you think the success of Fiserv Forum and the fact that the Democratic National Convention is coming here is restarting the views of the Republicans about the city of Milwaukee and the county?
I would hope. I mean, look, they're already coming in here for the Brewers games, right? And Brewers are fantastic, and they're going to have a great season, and people are going to come in here. Same thing with the Bucks, right? And so people are coming in here, and they're fine with cheering for Milwaukee when it's sports. Why not cheer for Milwaukee year-round, right? Cheer for our economic success. Bring your businesses here. We've got an educated workforce. We've got great institutions of higher learning. I'm a proud graduate of UW-Milwaukee, and tapping into the alumni network is a way we're going to boost economic development here. But for them, I think they have to recognize that, and hopefully that bridges that divide. Frankly, Steve, I think most of them know it, but they also know that this is an easy thing to go to the doors and say, yeah, you're suffering, yeah, it's tough for you, but they can't admit and say, well, one of the problems might be because we're not doing Medicaid expansion or because we're not funding our public schools. It's a lot easier to point at somebody else and say, that's the other. Those are the ones that you should worry about. Those are the ones that you should watch out for. Those are the ones that are looking down on you. The reality is when those people start to talk to each other, I recognize that's not the case.
Well, 4 or 5 months ago, the speaker floated a trial balloon saying maybe the state is giving MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools, too much state aid. Have you heard any talk in the Capitol about that?
I mean, it's a ludicrous idea, right? The fact is they've pulled money away for the voucher program, which has failed. They're trying to fund not just one extra system, but now 3 separate systems in the form of the voucher program at the same time as they're not giving resources to public schools. But this idea that they're saying, well, we're going to fund it less and hope that it succeeds is ridiculous, right? That's like saying, well, my car is breaking down, I guess I'll have to spend less money on it to show it. Right? Is your car going to fix itself? No. The same thing if you have a worker saying, well, that worker's not working as hard, I'll pay him less. Hopefully that'll teach him. Right? This doesn't work in any type of logic. But for whatever reason, if they think it works in scapegoating and saying, if we punish these kids and we give them less of a path to success and we hurt them, somehow that helps Wisconsin. I think that's absolutely ludicrous. And so what we're doing is because the state has failed to invest in not just public schools in Milwaukee, but public schools across the state, we have yet to restore the funds that were cut 10 years ago, right? The largest cut to education. We have not gotten back to where we were. And because of that, everyone in the state is suffering. Right? And we need to get back to that, especially now when we have an economic surplus. So it's not just Milwaukee that's hurting, it's everybody.
The achievement gap in Milwaukee, Madison, Racine between white students and African Americans.
Yeah.
Is the answer, is a remedy to fixing that more state aid for MPS?
Well, I think it's actually addressing poverty head on. Right? Frankly, and this is something where my counterpart in the Education Committee, Senator Olson, and I think he gets it, right? Which is to say that most of what they're dealing with is the repercussions of a society that's ignored too many people, right? Where because of historic segregation and because of toxic poverty, we have places where these kids are coming into school and they're not finishing in that classroom. They're moving around because their parents are homeless, so they're homeless. They don't know where they're getting their next meal. If you are in a classroom and you don't know where you're going to sleep and you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you're not that worried about trying to figure out arithmetic or history. You're trying to figure out where you're going to go in life. That needs to be addressed. Otherwise, it's going to scar our public schools, and it's going to scar that person, it's going to scar society. That's what needs to be addressed. And frankly, we are expecting our public schools to be social administrators and not just educators. If we're going to do that, we have to fund it.
What are your thoughts on how to remedy the gun violence?
Well, we have a number of proposals. This is, and I think first and foremost is to recognize this is a solvable problem. I reject the idea from politicians who say, well, gosh, this is just the way that it is. Those folks should resign and move on and let somebody in who's actually going to make laws to try and address it. If you admit defeat before you even start, what are you doing? The fact is, in other states where they have put forward extreme risk protection orders, where they have been able to say we're going to remove guns from a situation where somebody has committed domestic violence or where somebody has committed a violent crime, and you are more likely, based off of science, to hurt somebody else or go on a shooting spree or shoot somebody, that makes sense. And for whatever reason, the leaders on the Republican side have said we're fine with the laws, which frankly is them saying they're fine with these shootings and we should just get used to them. We should never get used to these, right? We should never get used to these. We should strive to make sure that we can address these problems. In the meantime, the community is banding together stronger than ever. I was present days after the Sikh temple shooting that happened in my community in Oak Creek, and that community has banded together and been stronger than ever in making sure that they are not going to be victims of that divide of a racist attack. So those are things that we can be doing. We'll continue to push until they get done.
A recent Public Policy Forum report said that Milwaukee County and the city of Milwaukee face pension shortfalls of $2 billion. How does that piper get paid, sir?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is something where we're going to have to take a fresh look at it. I think that you do have a fully funded pension system at the state.
Right.
At the same time, you're dealing with the repercussions of not allowing locals to be able to control their own revenue streams. Right. You're not giving the shared revenue back where it's produced. As I said already, I'll repeat it again. $538 million more went to the state than 10 years ago. So we're putting more money in. The economy is doing well. We're putting tax revenue into the state.
Yes.
At the same time, they're cutting how much is coming back. And so if you even just let the money stay here, you're able to start address those pensions. But these things, I think, are purposely malnourished. They're purposely underfunding the city, underfunding the county, underfunding municipalities here. And as a result, then they say, well, you're going to have to fix it. The fix, if they don't do something about it, is that there's going to be mass layoffs and that there's going to be a lot of problems that the state is going to have to step in and bail out. And that's a problem that they have produced, not locally.
Two final questions. Then, is your message that if you're elected, Milwaukee County government will have to not have a choice but to provide less services, sir?
Look, I think if we are down this path where they have decided to put us into a straitjacket, it's going to be a struggle to try and move and flourish. But for me, as somebody who's born here, raised here, and somebody who's a fighter with endurance, we're going to make sure that we're looking down the field as far as we can about where we want to go. So that, yes, while we may end up having to have cuts to begin with, they're going to be done in an open, honest, transparent way with the public at the table, with leaders at the table, so that we're not hurting each other. But also having a look where we're going to be going, where we want to go. Okay. Otherwise, we just keep cutting ourselves into oblivion. And when we look up, we've lost our parks, we've lost transit, we've lost mental health, we've lost our senior centers, we've lost those things that Milwaukee County cherishes most and makes us a unique and great community. That, for me, is the bottom line, right? That, yes, we may end up being forced into this situation, but we need a fighter. We need somebody who's going to get us out of it. And that's why I'm running for county executive, to do just that.
Final question, differences between you and your opponent on April 7th, sir?
Yeah, experience. I've been doing this for 4 times as long as my opponent. I've been a state senator, which is 3 times as large of a constituency as his. I represent not just the city of Milwaukee, but half Milwaukee, half of the suburbs, which is how I was able to earn a majority of the suburbs in the last election in the primary. I think we'll do that because of that balance. Beyond that, we've gotten almost double the number of bills passed through the legislature, so we're able to work in a bipartisan way, which I think is key and important. But we're ready to lead on day one. I've been transparent, I've been clear, and the things that we're talking about doing are exactly what I've been doing the last 12 years. So I think that's why people trust me, and hopefully will trust me to be their county executive moving forward.
Democratic Senator Chris Larson has represented District 7 since 2011 in the Senate, now running for Milwaukee County Executive. The election is April 7th. Senator, thanks for joining WisconsinEye.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
This program is a production of WisconsinEye, an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit media network with a mission to inform, educate, and engage the citizens of Wisconsin. WisconsinEye is the nation's first and only independently funded state civic broadcast network, providing gavel-to-gavel access to government proceedings and events at the state capitol.